Excellent. Okay, so we start the recording and I'll hand over to you.
Right, thank you for having us. We pre-recorded our presentation because it's 5 speakers coordinating and we wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any glitches. So I'll share screen and start the video.
Kisukukye. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Talbert. I am a proud member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. I have had the great opportunity of working with some talented individuals that share my passion for the Sanka language. Let me tell you a little bit about the Ktunaxa language. Here's where we're at, in the northwestern Montana. There are different names for our language. Kootenai is the name given to us by the Siyapis. Ktunaxa is the name for all the Kootenai bands, and then there's Sanka, which is the name of the band down here on our beautiful home, the Flathead Reservation. My own passion for this project grew from my desire to learn my language, but I needed a convenient way of learning. Currently today, there are only 12 fluent speakers whom speak the Sanka language. Unfortunately, with few speakers, classes are limited, and Sanka members have been known to be private about their culture. Fortunately for us, our members do have documentation of the language, the Sanka dictionary, Ktunaxa legends, some audio recordings, and a collection of stories written by our Kootenai Culture Committee. Sanka classes are taught at the Salish Kootenai College, which was founded in 1980. Many people cannot attend these classes, however, due to lack of time, myself included. Recently, Randell has been teaching Sanka classes online to those who are interested, but I still wanted something that I could interact with myself, and that was also convenient. The biggest struggle with learning a language is the availability. Sanka is not something you can go online and look up. You have to know the right people, and you have to find a way to work around their schedules in order to learn. As a mother, a full-time employee, and a graduate student, my time availability is very limited. Yet my desire to teach my children their native language makes this project a priority. Eventually, our interest led to the founding of this project. We are hopeful that this app might help hurdle some limitations. This project grew out of a language conference back in April of 2019, here in Polson, Montana, on the Flathead Reservation, where we reviewed different language learning tools and solutions, and eventually we decided that the app was the best option. We would also like to note that we do have the blessing of our council for this project, and we have successfully applied for the grant for the Endangered Language Fund, and we were awarded the Native Voices Endowment Grant. We decided to make a story game like a digital interactive graphic novel. It's a fun interactive game that tells the story of a young girl visiting her auntie's house on the reservation. In our interactive game, the player has a mission and solves tasks and puzzles and needs to talk to people to advance in the game. Some of you might ask, why a game? We decided that a game offered multiple benefits in the targeted audiences. Our group believed the app would be more intriguing to younger generations who are curious about their language. This app allows users to both hear and see visually the Sanka language. For enrolled members who were not raised in Sanka-speaking households, this ability to hear the words and see them will be beneficial to their learning. We wanted our users to be able to take a minute in the car, between classes, at lunch, to just open their phone and have access to this new learning avenue.
Hi, I'm Kathrin. I'm a linguist and instructional designer. So for our game, we're using the game mechanics of interactive fiction. Just a few words on this in case you're not familiar with the concept. Generally speaking, interactive fiction describes stories or text-based games in which the reader has some control over how the story develops. They can make choices between different story paths, You might know this from choose your own adventure books, or in digital text-based adventure games, players can explore the story space by typing commands. These games then soon turned into hypertext fiction in which players could simply click on text or buttons to make choices. In our game, we still employ the same mechanism. So as a learner, you make choices about how to proceed in the story by clicking on options. And in addition, our story is supported with illustrations and a graphic interface, and it also simulates dialogue. As Liz already explained, we take on the role of a young person who moves to the reservation after finishing high school with the goal of getting into Salish Kutni College. For that, we'll need to pick up on language and culture skills before the summer is over to earn a scholarship and make some friends and learn about the area. The tricky thing in developing a story-based language learning adventure is to integrate the language curriculum with the story so that the story becomes a purposeful practice space for the language content. It's a complex and a challenging development process, but there are many benefits that such games offer to support language learning. Let's look at those. So as Liz already pointed out, we wanted to create something that is fun and easy to engage with. So learning feels casual and less like a chore. So learners will be motivated to engage with the language more frequently. Also, it's a safe learning environment where you can make mistakes in private and you don't need to be shy about getting things wrong. The game allows learners to participate in simulated conversations. And this is something that is especially important and helpful for learners of under-resourced languages who often have limited access to regular language classes and only few opportunities to use the language in conversation with native speakers. Also, rather than just memorizing lists of words, learners come across new words and phrases while they're embedded in relevant contexts. And in order to solve tasks in a story, learners need to apply their language skills, which makes language the tool to get the job done, which comes closer to the function language has in real life in comparison to language in a textbook. And another important benefit, a textbook usually cannot provide feedback to a learner or correct their language use or model it. So within our story game, learners receive feedback either explicitly, like here, the feedback is given by our character's mom via text message while we are still on the bus to the reservation, or feedback could be given implicitly by another character's reaction to what the learner chose to say, or a consequence to a choice they made. There are several learning principles that we employ in this application. Apart from contextualized language content and applied learning tasks, there are others that are commonly agreed to support language learning. For example, we offer multimodal language input. That means illustrations and audio to reinforce vocabulary. There's an emergent dictionary which populates with new words and phrases as the learner encounters them in the game. And there are vocabulary splash screens to reinforce newly encountered words and concepts. For example, here's a splash screen for klukmul, that is fry bread. If you click on the word itself, you can hear how it's pronounced. And generally, the game works with scaffolded immersion. That means once a term is introduced in the target language, it stays in the target language. It will always be presented and used in the target language. So we start out in a common language, in this case English, and little by little, we are more and more immersed in the target language here, Ktunaxa. And we are following the principle of spaced repetition, so we make sure to repeat language content from earlier levels frequently afterwards.
A big part of this project has been collaborating, and our process has developed over time to become a big Venn diagram of skills, and each of us has our own relative domain that we exist in, but there's also a lot of overlap in helping each other. So each of our parts are listed here. I'll run through them quickly. Randell, he takes care of the language support puzzles and various other co-managing. Liz has the stories, character development, and narrative. Rich does art and illustration. I do design and media. And Kathrin takes care of the language pedagogy and game design, also manages. Another part of collaboration is the tools we use. Obviously, we're using Zoom now to communicate here, and we do that weekly. Another aspect is the messenger chat we have and has been going for about a year. And just recently, we started to get our files all organized and ready and prepared to have things structured for expansion and going forward. And we've also started using the Miro board as a kind of visual representation of the different storylines and developing processes that we are designing right now as a team.
How's it going? I'm Randall. I'm a part of the Salish Reservation. I have the pleasure to come up with the puzzles we are putting in the game. The puzzles are a way to have your brain work in a different way than just through a story. It lets you use what you've learned instead of just reading and listening. I get the ideas for the puzzles from our weekly conversations. A word or a phrase will spark my puzzle thoughts. The game will have a point system for language and for culture. The game will have a backpack for the items we will be having on our journey. We will also have a dictionary with words that we have learned so far. Also, it is my responsibility to make sure we are accurate. It's a struggle to keep our language alive, but it's also important to teach it accurately. We have the Tribal Council's permission to create a game that can teach our language. We are using open source software, which means we will have the rights to the game and we can decide on how the game is distributed. We have people that are concerned with accuracy, so we are also going to share our material with the elders and the speakers of our community. We are also asking the elders and storytellers for advice of what they would like to see in the game. We do have some characters from our stories and legends. For instance, one of our characters is Skinkoots. He's a trickster. As to accuracy, we will be sharing the game with the Kootenai Culture Committee.
Hi, I'm Rich, and I'm the artist. My grandma was a full-blood Spokane flathead, and my grandpa was what we call a mixed blood, either Kootenai or Cree, we're not sure which. Being a member of a tribe that shares regional and cultural ties with the Kootenai has made it especially rewarding to be involved in this project. My goal as the artist is to reinforce the vocabulary and support the storyline with authentic and appropriate, and I hope, succinct and compelling illustrations. Many of the geometric designs that you see on the splash screens and borders are inspired by traditional parfleche bag designs, which I dig. Here are a few illustration examples. We also make up our own brands for some vocabulary assets, such as flour, soda, etc. Our artwork is based on local scenery. Randall goes out, takes pictures of Polson in the area and sends them to me, and then I copy them. One of the things we learned while researching other language learning games was that they rely on stock imagery and standard iconography, resulting in a very homogeneous, institutionalized look. We provide original artwork for every aspect of our game, down to audio icons and forward arrows. We want everything we create to be informed by an indigenous rather than a Silicon Valley worldview. Our art is collaborative. I send sketches and concepts to the team as I'm working on them, and a lot of great collaborations happen that way. I've never done anything like this before, and I'm not sure if anyone has. We're learning how to design this game by, well, designing it. It's a painstaking process fraught with challenges, surprises, and a lot of joy. It's a great honor to be a part of this team.
And part of that is developing this icons and working together to have certain illustrations turn into digital reality is what I take care of. And so it's been fun to work with Rich on that aspect, and hearing different feedback from Liz and other members of the team has helped to make these more culturally accurate as icons go. And yeah, as in terms of culture, it's been great to incorporate the shapes and certain patterns that we've picked up from Parflesh and other designs as we've gone. Kathrin was nice enough to start the sketches when we began the project, and I've taken those shapes and made them in digital mediums like Adobe XD and other programs that allow me to lay out shapes. And I've added functionality, I've added certain use case scenarios to try and get a good sense of how people will use the game going forward. And part of serving that use is developing the finer points of it, and one of those finer points is the vocabulary and how the words will be retained and shown to people. So this was from a few months ago, some design I did where I chose some colors and showed some cards here that would represent vocab pictures and words shown in the native language Ktunaxa and also English. And as well, I explore the different logos or different functionalities that the buttons or different uses may need and how they could develop in the future. So another aspect of my role here has been coordinating with an external partner, namely General Assembly, and their 3 students that they assigned to our project. And this was a free service that they allowed us to participate in, and we also got the go-ahead from the team here before I agreed to anything. And it was fun to collaborate with them on the user experience aspect and seeing how the player will play and what they might need, how they could level up, different challenges we could lay out for them, and also what their needs and wants are in the game itself. So not only did this present a fun development, but it also presented a rather challenging cultural aspect that was the speed of Silicon Valley in the agile process versus the more slow trust building that the Native American communities often have. So this has been a big point of smoothing out and figuring out over many conversations while we were working together, and allowed us to continue and develop this new aspect of the design in a good way. So the main aspect that we're showing from their presentation is the dictionary that they developed. This is the design they came up with, and the other one was the one I had developed beforehand. So this shows the dictionary in a more simplified app way, where the phrases and the dictionary definition itself are shown directly with the picture, and the Ktunaxa words will actually be filled in there later.
Right. Besides the benefits of an interactive fiction game being a great tool for learners to engage with, the process of developing this language adventure is a learning process in itself. So as we're investigating the language, we pick up quite a lot of language and cultural knowledge in the process of figuring out what should go in the app. So we think this counts as a strong example of project-based learning. It also fosters teamwork skills, creative story design, game design, and curriculum development skills. So lots of capacity building is happening as a side effect of working on this project.
What we are planning next is to get a wider Ktunaxa community involved in this project, to get their feedback and game ideas. And we want to plan to offer this approach to other communities who might be interested in building the game for themselves by doing other workshops. We want to export this approach and offer workshops and guidance for this sort of game development for neighbors and communities with interest in language preservation. If you have any questions or you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us at the email provided on the slide. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we've now got a few minutes for questions.
I'll keep that slide on a little bit longer in case people want to note the email address. And I'll stop the share.
Okay, great. So we've got one question in the chat already. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question? Is it Luara? Let's see, I'll just see if I can. If you can't unmute yourself, I'll just ask the question for everyone. So to what extent do these interactive stories cut across different age ranges in terms of consumption? Does the being digital make the younger speakers the main consumers, and how accessible are they to the older speakers or those with limited digital skills?
Do you want to go for this, or how are you feeling?
I can say something to this.
Okay. I'll add on to whatever you say.
Unless you want to go for it, Randall.
I don't know. Go ahead,
Good.
Kathrin.
I'll make a start. The way that the story content is structured will make this, we think, mostly attractive for a younger age range and hopefully teenagers, but we don't have any data on this yet. So that's going to be part of the next step, getting the wider Ktunaxa community involved, which will also include getting feedback from the target audience. So we will see how we can maybe ramp up the story a little bit to target a wider age range. But in general, it's just a cute thing to engage with. So even I will be playing this at some point, you know. And yeah, so it really depends with these stories on what kind of content you're going for, what kind of story content you're going for. You can absolutely make this kid-friendly, or you can make it, you know, more adult-rated story games. Everything goes there, but that is really up to, you know, personal preference. But we are targeting a younger audience. Maybe Liz, you can say something to that, because that was also your point in the presentation. We're hoping for teenagers and kids to interact with this most.
Yeah, I felt like the app was set up for younger speakers and also older speakers who are beginning, such as myself. It kind of is giving over the general language. You're getting used to, you're getting comfortable with the pronunciations, and I've always thought of this as more towards 10 and up for new speakers. And there was talk about even doing a second project where we would target a different audience.
Also, in a question you mentioned limited digital skills. If somebody has a smartphone and can get the app, and actually at the moment we're still working with a browser-based format, so making it mobile is going to be the next step. But if people are able to receive emails and with that receive our files, they will be able to play this. So it's very low threshold that way. Also, yeah, with regards to the question from Ari, if money were no object and the colonialist control of public education were disempowered, how would you reimagine your future? Is this question mostly regarding to tools as well? That's how I interpreted that. Because right now we're still working most and foremost with open source software, and we also intend to keep it that way, so that you know, the tribe can be in charge of the whole development and maintenance process afterwards. And well, personally, my goal is to actually create a tool that is specifically made for this development process to develop interactive fiction for language learning. So we're currently looking at ways to actually create a platform that will enable other communities to use the same approach to do the same thing.
I was
So
thinking of Randell and the Council of Elders, etc.
okay.
If you could reimagine the whole positioning of the language, the languaculture, if you will. But you're right, you responded. Maybe each of you might respond. It's up to you.
I just want to make sure so that we don't run too much over, because I know that some people have been here all day or all night or whatever it is in your time zone. So I just wanted to make sure that we could ask Sarah's question, and then if we've got a bit more time after the last presentation, like maybe we can come back to some of these questions because they're really interesting. Sarah, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, it's quite a little question. It was just when you mentioned in your game design about changing the universal icons to kind of the new drawings and the new symbols you redesigned. I just wondered why you decided this step was important. Was it in terms of like cultural sensitivity or just creating a whole unique individual experience? Yeah, I was just interested on the thinking behind that.
Yeah, I know Rich might have more to say, but I also have an opinion here, and it's basically, yeah, just to give that sense of the differentiation and the sense of, hey, like this app is meant for a certain community. This is for, the Native American community, specifically the Ktunaxa at this point. And so we're having fun with it, honestly, and giving it a chance to breathe more than, maybe there's just a certain route that a lot of apps are made in now. And so we're kind of getting out of that groove and exploring ways of more inclusion, digital inclusion this way. And that's just one of the avenues we kind of came up with in our idea sessions. So yeah, we figure it's only going to be positive.
Yeah, Kathrin and I were having a discussion, and she was telling me about, she had read something about an app where in Australia, the forward arrows were misconstrued by Aboriginals as bird tracks. So they were trying to use them to go the opposite direction because they didn't understand that there were forward arrows, not bird tracks. And so that kind of sparked me to start thinking of different ways to do it, using winter count pictographs from the plains is how I started coming up with that. And also just fun. Like I'm using, one of our designs is to take like the menu, the hamburger menu, the 3-line menu icon, and put that into a parfleche design. So there's a lot of humor, because I think people don't understand that natives are pretty funny.
I'd like to chime in too on this. Through the committee here, the community, they like to associate with a lot of stuff that is native. So if we're having a language for the native language, for a game for the native language, then, and we have all these things that look more native than the generic icons and stuff, I think it'd be more fun to the native that is learning the language using the app than just using the regular icons.
I see. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, all of you, for giving me such a full answer. It's really fascinating, really great presentation. It was brilliant. Well done.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation and a really exciting project, and I'm looking forward to checking out the like kind of hearing more about it, and kind of looking it over in the recordings when they become available. So let's now go on to our second presentation, which is by Florentina Costea and Elena Saricu Todică from the Arman Community from Romania. And their talk is Good Practice Example for Learning the Aromanian Language. Florentina?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I will just make a short introduction because my colleague Elena will talk a little bit more about the main subject of this presentation, about the e-learning platform that we developed in order to save what can be saved for our language, for Aromanian language. Our community are the Aromanians. Who are they? So Aromanians, very often there is a confusion because some people think that they are Armenians, or some people think that they are Romanians, but okay, we are Aromanians, and the name that we have between ourselves, it's Armeni. So this is the name that we are using within our community. And in order to activate a little bit the atmosphere, because I know that it's very late and we are almost the last ones in the presentation, in the program, I will just give you an example of how our language sounds like, and I will just sing a little bit. Nă feată dianina, abre nă feată dianina, nă feată dianina, bre John liara din poli. Nă feată dianina, bre John liara din poli. So this is how our language sounds in music. Our community, it's spread in several Balkan countries, and here on the map you can see some old settlements of our community. I just rounded with red color some cities that that are well known, let's say, so Tirana in Albania, or Skopje in the Republic of North Macedonia, or Thessaloniki in Greece, or Sofia in Bulgaria. And nowadays, a large community is present also in Romania. Me and Elena we are based in Bucharest, in Romania. Unfortunately, as is the situation for many other small languages, we don't know the exact number of our community. We have just an approximation that we are around 1 million across the Balkans, being spread in so many countries in the Balkans. You can understand that it's difficult to build I don't know, a network that will be functional in order to save our language. It's well known also that in the history of the national states formed in the Balkans after 1913, a very large number of the well-known heroes or politicians or benefactors were with Aromanian origins in Greece or in Albania or in nowadays Republic of North Macedonia, or even in Romania. I will give you just an example, and it's about Moscopole. Voskopole is the name of the place, which is now found in Albania, but The biggest boom was in 18th century, where it was the second largest city in the Ottoman Empire after Istanbul, and a printing press was also operating here. It was the second one in the Ottoman Empire after that of Constantinople. And also in the 18th century, one prestigious educational institution was created, New Academy. And the first dictionary of 4 modern Balkan languages, Greek, Albanian, Aromanian, and Bulgarian, was published there. You can see now some of our traditional costumes, which unfortunately are not worn nowadays just by some old people in very few villages in the northern part of Greece. Some other examples of our traditional costumes and some old photos with wedding customs. Our language, it's mentioned in UNESCO Red Book, or the new Atlas of the world's languages in danger. And the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe released in 1997 the recommendation 1333, which recommends to the Balkan countries where Aromanian lives to give them support for their language, for their culture. Unfortunately, it's just a recommendation, and the provisions are not applied in very large extent in all these countries. Our target is to try to preserve what can be preserved, or save what can be saved today, because as is the situation of some other small languages, there is an interruption in the intergenerational transmission of the language. There is a low interest or no motivation of the young people to learn the language. There is a lack of resources, and as I said, the community is spread in several countries. We were thinking how we can do this, and we concluded that it's important to use the new ways of communication and treat the language as a brand, and to develop that brand loyalty from an early age. But how? And we concluded that it's important to target the young people, to somehow convince them that different, it's meaning something special, interesting, or unique, not necessarily something strange, and to create a modern image of the language, and have a holistic approach, make good use of technology, link up with positive emotions, and create opportunities to use the language, and also make our language attractive. In this respect, we initiated a campaign where we used some influencers like well-known Simona Halep, the tennis player, which is now in the second place in the world, but she was on the first place in the world in like a tennis player, and speaking in the native language, in Aromanian. And this campaign was very successful among the people. We use it mainly on Facebook. And speaking about Facebook, very soon we will have the Facebook menu in our language. It was a long way, but we expect that moment with excitement. And as I said, it's important to treat the language as an iPhone, not like an old phone. Thank you very much. That was my short introduction, and I will give the floor to my colleague Elena to show you how we thought that we can further save our language using new ways of communication and new technologies. Thank you very much. And I'm here for the questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Florentina. So hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity of being night together. In Bucharest is 11 o'clock, so it's late. Thank you for the beautiful song, Florentina. I will now share, I am Elena. I will share now with you my screen. And I will briefly present the project that we implemented between 2015 and 2016, and the project called Învață Armânești, which means learn Aromanian language. So I just gave you another small example about how our language sound like. So let's hope I will succeed in sharing my screen with you. One moment, please. Okay. So everybody can see now my screen, I hope.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Învață Armânești project has as a project promoter the Arman Community from Romania. We have here an organization, a small and brave organization that is trying to do the impossible. And we earned a nice grant from the Norwegian grants, the ITEE grants, because we convinced that our language is an intangible patrimony, and we need to protect, preserve, and try to transmit further the language in order to not to lose access to other nice cultural intangible patrimony that our culture may offer to the world, because the language is vector of intangible patrimony. So if we lose the language, we lose actually a lot of other wonderful things.
Sorry, Elena, could you speak up just a little bit, if possible? I know it's late there, so you don't want to shout, but if you come a little bit close to the mic, maybe that solves it. Thank you.
You can hear me nicely?
No, it's better. It's very good. Thank you.
Yes, it's better. I will try to do it in a stronger way. Thank you.
That's perfect now.
So as I said, the project promoter was the Arman Community from Romania. The grant was the ITEE grant from the Norwegian grants. The implementation period was starting with March 2015 until April 2016, and we had a partner in this project, a very nice Catalan Icelandic partner. So it's not it is interesting that actually that recommendation 1333 that Florentina mentioned before was actually made by a Catalan, and now we received within this project a nice help from our Catalan friends from Iceland, the Catalanska Husit of Islandi. I will explain further the way in which they were involved in the project and what we developed together. So the general objective of the project is to protect and preserve the intangible patrimony represented by the Aromanian language for the next generations, and facilitate to the large public access to the Arman cultural patrimony. We did a lot of things within the project. On this slide, we put them together. I will briefly explain the main outcome of the project. Actually, was the fact that we succeed to settle up a school of language in Bucharest. As Florentina mentioned before, our language, we are losing the language because the younger generation do not have the opportunity to learn it in a natural way from the house. There are in Romania, nor in Albania or Greece, as far as I know, there aren't any educational frameworks for early ages. So the children the young children, as they are institutionalized at 3 years old, for example, they are losing the chance of learning this language from early age. And we are also forgetting the language because if you want to improve your communication in Arman, or if you want to learn, it's very difficult to find courses, it's very difficult to find books, it's very difficult to find any media in Arman language to hear how it sounds, or to I mean, we are a lot at the end, but we do not exist in the media. Now we have the chance with the Facebook and the social media to be like more present in internet. So within the project, we settled up this school of language in Bucharest, and we drafted our own courses for different levels of age and knowledge. And we created audiobooks, we implemented a lot of hours of course, like almost 300 hours within a year, which is quite a lot for our organization. We drafted also traditional costume in order to encourage the learning and practicing the traditional dances, because actually our last redoute, or how to say, the last tool that we have functioning now, it's actually the music and the traditional songs, in order not to lose the language. I mean, the people are still learning this easily, the songs, you know, even if sometimes they do not understand what the songs are really saying. And we created a lot of events within the project with for the school. The most important tool that we created in order to make the language attractive to the younger generation, as it is one of our goals to preserve the language, is actually the first e-learning platform in Aromanian. It is a tool that we didn't have before, and we succeeded to do that within the project. And on the further slides, I will present briefly some of the possibilities that this platform offers. So you may reach, we created a website of the project, which is ambațarmânești.com. That you can see here, and if you go on Learn Online, you can reach the platform. The e-learning platform is free, it's open to everybody, but you have to log in with a username and a password. So within the platform, there are 3 sections. You can see them on this slide. It's a section with interactive application, or with exercises with English support. I mean, having the support language English. So this is a tool that is really open to all the Aromanians that are spread all over the world, because as Florentina said before, we are present now in Romania, Greece, Albania, Northern Macedonia, but also United States of America, also Australia. So we are really worldwide spread. So this tool, it's very useful in this way. Here we created more than 100 interactive applications organized in a very similar way as the well-known platform Duolingo offers. So we have now the possibility to learn Arman language from English. Also for the Arman natives that are born in other countries, as I said before. So then the second section is a very nice section because it's an in lingua section. And here actually on this button, the middle button, you can hear the best, how our language sounds like. Because on this section, we gathered a lot of texts and a lot of applications of the audio synchronization while scrolling text. So you hear the text and you see how the word is written. And I will show this on the next slide, more detailed. And on the third section, we uploaded all the materials that we drafted within the project, all the courses, I mean. So this we are on, if you want to hear how our language sounds like, and you want to see also how it's written, you go on this section, and here you will find this kind of texts that are synchron. Yes, so while you are listening and you see how it's written, this kind, or there are a lot of applications like this. Within this section, we have also this kind of common, actually, exercises for learning a language, but you have to know that we didn't have anything like that before. So for us, it's quite an achievement. As I said, the platform is free. So please visit us. On the next slide, I will briefly present the materials that we drafted, the physical materials that we drafted for our courses. This was the book, the notebook for the small children, 6-8 years old. The other book for the other level of language.
Elena, I don't want to interrupt you. It's just if you could finish in like the next, like maybe minute or so, and then we can have time for a couple of questions.
No problem. Yes, I will finish very soon because.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I will just go briefly on this with only one mention here that these audiobooks were very important for us as here we made a collection of Aromanian literature that a lot of people didn't have any idea it existed. So we wanted to make people aware that we have rich literature, that we have theater, we have poetry, and nice songs in Arman language. And here you can see the book, a history book that we drafted, and images from our courses and events. The project finished with a nice event in Reykjavik. And now I go back to our partner that organized for us the Aromanian Culture Weekend. And there we had the possibility to promote our culture. And he drafted also a nice short documentary about the project. So please visit us on învațăarmânești.com, and we are waiting for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to both of you. So we don't have much time, so we've got a question from Radu, and then maybe we can just take one more quick question before we move on to the final slot so that we don't keep you too long into the night, although I think as with all of these talks, we have many more questions and things to discuss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I? Ok. Bună seara, Florentina și Elena. Ce faceți, bre?
Noi ducem țadrați.
Zburați armânești.
Zburăm armânești, yeah.
Good. So one of my questions, well, I have lots of comments and questions, but there's no time for them, and we'll probably be able to discuss this. Why would you call it Arman language and not Armânești? One. Just for the sake of the English speakers, you can call it Aromanian or Vlach. Then you mentioned we will show you how our language is spoken and how is written. How is written where? In Romania, in Greece, do they really, in Albania, do they really write it? You forgot to mention Bulgaria, by the way. There are small
yes, I mentioned the city Sofia. So at the
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Where it was the map.
Yeah, compact communities. And so 1, 2, and the third would be how can we organize a getting together of different people who are interested in organizing a conference about anticipating towards a documentation of our Romanian, yeah, all the small pockets. So the question about how we write it was how we write it in the Aromanian communities in Romania, or how we write it in the Aromanian communities in Greece, and so on. So yeah, so first one, why the Arman language? Because Arman is the male member of the Aromanian community, and the language is called Armânești.
Yes, but you say also Greek language.
Pardon?
In English, you say Greek language also. No, as a translation. I don't know.
Of what? Of what?
Speaking about the Greek language. You use the term Greek language.
Yeah, but why don't you call it, for the sake of the English speakers, Aromanian language or Vlach language?
I don't know.
Okay, that doesn't matter. Sorry. What about how it is written?
We have an issue with the names.
No. Sorry. I think it is
so
better to preserve.
There are a lot of exonyms exonyms, yes, for our community. So we are called Vlachs in Greece. We are called
all over the Balkans.
Aromani in Romania. There are many papers published with the name Aromanians for our community in English.
Which has been kind of the standard translation in English anyway.
Yes, and in Serbia we are called Țințari, but among ourselves we are calling our Armani. So this is a term that we are Armani, yes, that we are using among ourselves.
As the but you call the language Armânești.
Limba armânească.
Limba armânească.
Yes.
So,
what about the written? How we write it? I mean, we will show you how the language is written. To my knowledge, there's no standard of writing the language, and
yes, but this doesn't mean that the language cannot be written. I mean, we have a lot of friends of our age that are convinced that you cannot write Aromanian, but this is
yes, of course you can write any language.
So okay, write it. Our concept was okay, right? We write in the way that we think. It's fine, but
who is we? I mean, we, the community, the Aromanian community in Romania.
That did the project choose a standard of writing that was decided in Northern Macedonia, I think, in a moment, and we explained that standard that we use. We have a lot of discussion, it's true, and thank you.
Are you discussing with the Greek communities who would actually
they write it with
suggest a Greek-based alphabet.
Sorry, everyone. I really don't want to stop this.
Sorry,
but,
sorry.
we don't, I just don't want us to
funny.
go over too long. So Tihomir had a question about cooperating with other Aromanian organizations in other countries, but maybe you could put this in the chat, the answer to that, Florentina and Elena, just because I don't want to keep people too long, although it's really, really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elena and Florentina, and sorry for my being the devil's advocate.
And let's go on to our final speaker of the night, Tobias Weber from Ludwig-Maximilians-Universität in Munich, and he is going to be speaking about the media-based syllabus for adult minority language learning.
Yes, exactly. I hope you can hear and see me. Thank you very much for this introduction. I will make sure that I share my screen. So you should be seeing my slides now.
Yep, perfect.
Great. So let me get started. Today I would like to talk a bit about the use of media as a guiding principle in designing curricula and designing language courses, materials for adult minority language learning. Some areas. First of all, what I'm going to tell you is not novel. This does not mean that I'm only telling you things that you can already read up on, but rather that what I'm going to introduce as a topic I want to talk about is, despite being described in the literature, not really systematically described and systematically discussed. We are doing this, we are discussing this, but we're not systematically describing it. And so the first part of my presentation will be more theoretical, and I hope you bear with me. The second part will have some examples of my own research on this. And as you can see on my slides, there's a serious need for application. So my own results are only preliminary, and I hope that my presentation can inspire you to help and add more research, add more comments, more to the literature of this. So I would hope that we can also find more scenarios, test out different scenarios. My own research was on South Estonian. Please note that I'm not a South Estonian myself, and that I'm speaking on behalf of the community, but I'm a linguist, I'm a researcher working with and on South Estonian. So if you're interested in reading up on this example, I included the shortened link here so you can find the paper that came out earlier this year. First of all, let's consider the central guiding principle in designing course, in designing language materials, that is learner needs. So learner needs should always guide the courses we design, the classes we make, the materials we work with. Those may actually be given by external policies. So if you're working with a state-given curriculum in schools, in universities, there is an external policy governing what you should teach and what the goals of the course should be. On the other hand, you're also free in some scenarios and some contexts to conduct an individual needs analysis and find out what your learners actually want to know. And these things, both about the language, about linguistic forms, about the grammar, but they could also be about non-linguistic knowledge, so real-world knowledge. And what I would like to focus on is also this, field of non-linguistic knowledge, skills, things that can be put into action outside of just speaking a language, communication. If we consider learner needs as the guiding principle in creating a language class, we actually give some of the agency to the learner. We let them guide us in making a class that considers them as our I don't want to say customers because this sounds so much like marketing, but consider them as the people who we want to benefit from the classes we offer for them. And especially if we're working with minoritized or endangered languages, we should definitely stress the needs of the community in what we're doing. And consider my role, I'm teaching South Estonian as someone who's not belonging to the community. And I know there is this huge discussion about colonialism, which we're hopefully not going to have later on in the comments. But I consider myself as supporting the goals of the community and trying to involve them, involve their own voices, involve their knowledge, their skills in what I'm teaching about the language, about the South Estonian cultures, about their media, about everything that concerns their world, their lives. So it is actually more than just language acquisition what we're doing if we plan a course, if we design materials. And I chose this very provocative title for the slide, Don't Be Weird. Of course, I'm not meaning any personal quirks. You should, of course, keep them and definitely also strive to be democratic and educated, and if you need, be old. But please don't assume that those people who you're teaching, those who you are talking to, are also in the same group. This weird bias going for Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic countries can be found in social sciences, and pedagogy is part of that. So what we do in a large bulk of the literature is actually not capturing the learner needs if they don't fall or don't belong to the I just listed above. So for example, communication, learning of grammar, learning of paradigms, getting certificates, grades, accolades, anything that we get in higher education, anything we are usually looking for as language learners in, say, a French or Spanish second language class. It's maybe there. And I really recommend this book by Vivian Cook from 2002 on the portrait of the L2 learner. And he describes various other needs that language learners may have. Those may range from religious observance and any parts of traditional and cultural customs that you want to participate through the language you acquire. You may want to have access to historical documents, be it in archives or in your personal family belongings, thereby connect family heritage. Learners may also want to just express an identity, swap an identity, connect with a different identity, with their heritage identity, or develop some more cognitive skills, and maybe just use the language for themselves. They want to sing in the language. They want to keep a diary in that language. So all of these needs may not necessarily be addressed by what we consider as the standard English second language tradition, for example. So these skills, the tasks that are connected to this, activities that we do, are not necessarily or not by standard included in a foreign language class. And partly because they're difficult to assess, difficult to grade, it's not easy to find a way of including them. But I would like to consider ways of how we can do that. So as you may know, there are different types of syllabus. Is basically the implementation of a curriculum, so how we teach, what we teach, and this includes the segmentation of topic, content, of language forms into chunks, and then the order or the sequencing of those chunks in which we want to acquire language, in which we want to acquire knowledge, and also strategies and tools for how we transmit knowledge onto our students, in which or how we want to facilitate learning. These syllabus types are not exclusively used. So you don't just choose one syllabus and stick with it, but you can combine them. You use several syllabus types at the same time, but there are tendencies that you favor one over the other depending on what you want to teach and how you want to teach it. So if we're coming from a linguistic perspective, we will often find a grammatical structural syllabus, so focusing on grammar, focusing on linguistic forms, or maybe even on linguistic functions, things you want to express, and everyday communicative tasks that you want to fulfill, maybe even in a way of building a lexicon. So these syllabus types you can see here are all very language focused on the language and its forms and its functions. On the other hand, there are syllabus types like the content syllabus or a text-based syllabus. This text-based syllabus was proposed and covers a range of different genres of text. So it's covering not only the content in the text, but different types of text, from announcements and newspaper articles to stories, novels, and covers different genres of text there. So these syllabus types cover non-linguistic knowledge, different genres, different topics that we want to transmit in our teaching. However, something that I found missing in the literature is a focus on the medium. And the question that I asked myself, can we use the medium or the media as a guiding principle in designing a foreign language course? Let's briefly consider the medium and what working with a medium implies. There is this term media literacy. And I just took a very popular scientific definition from an US-American Association for Media Literacy, and they define media literacy as the following 5 skills that you're able to access, to analyze, evaluate, create, and act with and on media. This implies that you have the procedural and the declarative knowledge about media. So this means skills in media reception, skills in media creation, knowledge about the different media landscapes, a particular media landscape that you're immersed in, that you're involved with, critical awareness and questioning and asking questions, reflecting on the role of media and how you interact with it, and also active ways of actually using media, of getting hold of media, of interact media. This media literacy, it does not stand alone. You usually require other types of literacy. Of course, also the actual literacy, being able to read, but also skills of information literacy or data literacy, computer literacy, various types of being able to process information. And what we often find as a term used here is literacies or multiliteracies. The goals that I would like to consider for a media-based syllabus, or using the medium as a guiding principle. Of course, we want to teach language. As language teachers, we want to show how language works in use, how language works in different contexts, and describe language in how it's actually used in an authentic text. If need be, we also teach the prescriptive rules, so normative. If we, for example, deal with languages that have an examination, require a certification of a certain language standard, of course, we also teach those. But we also want to teach knowledge. We want to teach knowledge through the use of the authentic materials showing the real world, the context of our language communities, how they work, how their lives look like. And we want to also show existing sources of knowledge. We want to convey information as it is contained in the existing materials. And those range far beyond just language and linguistic knowledge. And finally, we also want to teach media literacy. This means we want to know how we can access sources, in locating them, finding them in an archive. How can we decode them? Can we access them? Are they in a transcribed format? Is it possible to mix them? And this ranges into the analytical skills of interpreting, understanding the media that we have at hand. We want to evaluate them, critique them, question them, and discuss them on also maybe a meta level if we can. We want to create new forms of media. We want to be creative in working with media and develop our own personal stance on media, with new media. Learn about ways of disseminating them, of accessing them, of altering media, becoming creative and active in the ways we use them. What does this require? First of all, we need at least some media to exist. This has to be accessible and to some extent also meant for a broader audience. So if you write your personal diary, this is not of any use in language room unless you've you feel like sharing them. But I would go so far as to say that even if we have just one surviving text, we can already build around this medium. How do we do this? We also include any kind of secondary literature we can find. We include dictionaries, databases, archives, any kind of text we can find that is dealing with the target community, with their culture, with skills that in order to engage with them, with their artifacts, with the everyday life, with their lives that and the media landscape that they're living in. We might also need a particular context. I'm not sure how far this is true, but maybe you can help me and discuss other possible applications of this concept. I was thinking that we might need young adults or adult learners who are capable of expressing their own autonomy. And I know that autonomy is not always easy to facilitate in a foreign language classroom. There might be constraints limiting autonomy, but ideally we have classes that are, for example, task-based, project-based, or work with content in which students get to express themselves and interact with the contents on an individual level and not just receive and reproduce what they hear. So to some extent, it also requires from the teacher that they have a flexible and dynamic teaching style. How would I conceptualize a media-based syllabus? First of all, we're using authentic sources and we use anything that we can find. So from primary sources to secondary sources, and I would also like to consider language resources, grammatical aids, dictionaries as a resource in their own right. So you can basically teach a language using a dictionary, and you can discuss what a dictionary is, how a dictionary is built up, what we need in order to interact with a dictionary. There might be information you want to share about how a dictionary is created. So those are not just aids, those are not just tools to learn a language, but they can be a language resource. They can be that we can work with. And ideally, we would start with those that are easily accessible, that are reliable, that are important. If I'm talking about importance and accessibility, I also mean that they should be relatable to the student. So if they have never seen a dictionary in their life, you need to carefully teach them of how to use them. But if they haven't seen them already, you can give them a dictionary and ask them to compare it to what they know from their own lives, to critically reflect on what the dictionary is and how it works. So of course we start with easy tasks and move complex tasks later. And we do so by recycling texts. So we bring back texts that have been only discussed in a very high level in the beginning and go into the depth of the grammatical structures, the content, or further uses in a later part. And I would consider this this kind of syllabus, this kind of approach, to contain also access points, not only to language, but also to the contents and to the media. And as researchers, we do usually have something to say about the media we are working with. If I work with an archive, I know what I'm doing with the archive. And so my research topics, the things that I do, can become tasks for my students in which I try to teach them also to interact with the medium in a meaningful way, just as I'm working with the medium in a meaningful way. So what this entails is that you share as professionals your knowledge and what your own work. You share what you do with a medium, on a medium, and turn it into a task for the class. So we are basically encouraging individual ways of interacting with the medium. And if I have those final 2 minutes, I would like to give an example from my own research. So the context that I was working in, this is what my research article was based, the one I recommend in the beginning. is that I was teaching university level class for undergrad students in a seminar on South Estonian language and culture. These students in my class were all non-native speakers. They had no prior familiarity with Estonian or with Finnish even. And I was trying to offer them a class that was not only language-based, but also on culture and on media in a more or less content-based instruction approach. And the example I'm going to give is from the first lesson of this class. And I designed the first lesson in the following way. I told my students to conduct an internet search on South Estonian. Of course, this presumes that the tools at hand to conduct an internet search, that they know how a search bar works, that they are all familiar with various search engines. You may be familiar with those. And I asked them to tell me something about South Estonian with what they can find on the internet or maybe in a library, and include the skills on media reception, how to get hold of the media, how to access media in this first task. And what they found were images, those were maps, sometimes even ethnographic descriptions, often very touristic, essentialistic, so condensed to something that might not be there. And in contrast to this, I presented a modern TV show where people are driving cars, they're talking to others on phones, they're wearing modern clothing and basically living the European, the Western lifestyle. And then we...
Hi, Tobias.
Yes.
2 or 3 minutes left?
Yes, I will finish on time, no problem.
Okay, great.
So we then discussed how those images relate. What is the internal view of the community expressed in the TV show, and what is the external view that we might find in ethnographic descriptions, that we can find in all those historical images of people, costumes, and engaging in traditional customs. So basically asking them to assess the media that they have just consumed. Who presents what, in which way, and why? So this is already critical media reception. And because we had already seen the TV show now, I could also exploit it on a linguistic basis and give them an introduction to phonology, give them an introduction to the orthography. They could also read texts that were written there, and slowly introduce them on the medium that they had already seen in the form of the TV show to language, to linguistic concepts. And I concluded this first lesson with a short translation task on a dictionary, and I actually did include the meta-level discussion about lexicography. So how do we use dictionaries? What are the uses of a dictionary? How are they designed, and for whom and why? What are the limits of orthography creation? And that was a very interesting first class, not only for me as a teacher, but also for my students, because they learned much more than just language and content, but they also learned how to use the media and how to find their own research topics on the media. So here are some conclusions. This is maybe also a short outlook. Please consider the importance of media literacy when you're creating a class, when you're creating materials. I would love to hear if you have other ideas about various contexts in which this media-based syllabus or the media as a guiding principle in language class creation can work. And of course, teach according to the learner needs, not only just communication, not only just grammar, but also content, knowledge about the world, knowledge about media, and skills in interacting with their world. And of course, this can be academic knowledge, as in my example, or indigenous knowledge, indigenous skills. So I know I rushed through this presentation, but I thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now or get in touch. There's my email address. And if you want to read the article, there's this shortened link into to the paper.
Somebody else just, which presentation was it? The one just now?
Thanks, Tobias. Maybe you could put the link in the chat.
I can.
Great. So we've got a couple of minutes for questions. We are running slightly over, but if we just have a few minutes, if anyone has questions, and then Rita has an announcement before we finish for the night. And of course, the break room is always open. So if anyone is on North American time or is still feeling alert, then you're very welcome to continue and go into the break room. Do we have any questions in the chat? See? People getting tired. So, Rita, do you want to make your announcement?
Yes, I want to make my
announcement. If anyone has,
and it's to do with the program. So you should be seeing now a version of the program. There are a couple of changes. I'm going to draw your attention to these now, and also obviously remind you several times tomorrow, so you needn't worry. And I'll show you where the changes are. So panel 14 is slightly shorter than initially advertised. So if you go here, there'll be a longer break. So the last talk of panel 14 is gone. We may not be able to put this program up tomorrow. I'm going to annotate. I'm very excited to use this annotation tool.
I'm looking forward to seeing the annotation tool.
Can you see the annotation?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So here's the annotation. There's no talk there. There was a talk by Jose, but it's gone. So that talk is gone. And then I'm going to show you. I'm a bit too excited about this annotation, but I'm also going to show you another change, which is on the next page, because it's linguists and numbers don't always mix, and this is indeed happened with the program. So here there was a mistake. So if you look at this bit here, you will see that it should be the times were wrong. Now I've got the right annotation tool. So it should start in 1945, and the second to last talk of the conference is 1945, and the last talk is at 2015. But like I said, I'm going to remind you tomorrow, probably without the annotation, so you'll get many reminders. Thank you, Lily. I'll stop my share.
Excellent. And now we have one question from Sarah. Do you want to ask your question? And then we will all retire for the night.
Hey, yeah, I was just gonna ask for just like another example of how you would use media in the class, just to give an idea, because the structure was really good. I just wanted like one standalone idea of how to use media in your classes, like one simple activity or something like that, just to really like, yeah, just hit home the concept of the media literacy in short task-based activities.
For example, I had access to a cookbook, a parallel text of a cookbook that would include South Estonian dishes and an English explanation. And I started this whole task based on my students' anticipation of what food they would consider to find in this region, or what they would expect a recipe to look like. So both activating their knowledge about the region and maybe their stereotypical conception of the region, while also activating their knowledge about the genre of text, the type of text that they would go to see and process. And then I would show them some linguistic examples so how they could interact with the recipe. And we read out recipes, we looked at forms in the recipe, and discussed various ways of cooking. And this evolved into a whole interactive talk, where my students then looked at ways of how they could make it fit any vegetarian or vegan food preferences, and how they would want to alter it for themselves. They started writing their own shopping lists, and so basically this whole task, starting with a short bit of a medium that they knew, developed into a conversation. And then I fed in more media. There was a film on cooking a traditional meal. there was an interactive platform that they could use to practice numbers, to practice numerals. And so they did not only receive the linguistic instruction, they did not only receive the instruction on the content, the knowledge about food and cooking, but they also received information on where to find the videos, where to find inspirations if they want to cook South Estonian meals. They also found practicing tools for the numerals. So this is the part where I would see that we can actually teach a bit of media literacy and questioning, accessing media in our content-based, task-based language teaching.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tobias. Lots of thanks from everyone in the chat. And if anyone would like to continue this discussion or any of the other discussions from this session or earlier sessions, please feel free to head over to the chat room, which is open, the break room, chat room, test room. And we will see